Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Fran Coach's Franchising 101 podcast series. I am Tim Parmeter, founder and CEO of Fran Coach, and your podcast host. Today, we have the second of a three-part segment on scaling your franchise. What is scaling your franchise? What are the different ways in which it can be done? And what does that mean to you as a franchise owner? To help us understand all of this, we have a very special guest joining us today to help us take a deep dive into this topic. But before we do that, let's first tell you who we are. Fran Coach is a national search firm dedicated to working with individuals who are interested in owning a franchise. We are partnered with over 500 of the top franchisors in the country, spanning nearly 60 industries. Our goal is to help clients find the absolute best franchise for them to own, and our goal of the Franchising 101 podcast series is to help educate people on all aspects of franchise ownership. So that's a bit about us. Now let's talk about what everybody's here for, which is how you can grow your franchise. And to help us with this topic, we are excited to have a special guest joining us today. Mr. Ben Reist is the Director of Franchise Development for the Moran Family of Brands. Moran features a wide array of outstanding automotive franchises, including Milex, Complete Auto Care, Mr. Transmission, and Turbo Tint. Ben, thanks for joining us today. How are you?
Good morning, Tim. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
We're excited to chat with you today and talk about the ways in which someone can scale and grow their franchise long term. The one thing I always want to kind of start off with this, though there's some exciting and fantastic ways you can really grow a big, massive business with scaling a franchise. Franchise ownership, number one, is not for everybody. Some people are 100% okay with a single unit franchise opportunity. Some of the happiest ones we've ever worked with just literally have one unit, and that is okay. But there are numerous long-term benefits for doing so. And so that's the point of the three-part series we have. Today is part two, and today we're going to talk about retail-based franchise models. So Ben, you're the expert. You're going to educate us all on how we grow this and what that looks like, the advantages and potential pitfalls along the way. But first off, before we get into multi-units, let's just talk about that first one. And from a retail standpoint, somebody comes in, they say, hey, I want one unit of that. What are they getting when they pay that franchise fee? What's kind of just walk us through franchise fee, and I know there's some ranges with this, but the kind of what they're getting, how we find that first location.
Yes. Well, it does all start with one. So, franchising, like many things in life, comes in all shapes and sizes. And so you really have to understand a couple of critical things. One is territory. So to your question, is it a defined territory? Is it protected? What is that radius of that protected territory? Some franchises that's defined, everything is mapped out. Brick and mortar in particular, they will not cannibalize existing stores. We follow that. We think it's essential. Other franchises, I won't name any names here. I don't think it's that type of podcast, unless you would like me to. They will
a sandwich place, perhaps.
Yeah, yes.
That also has the same name of a mode of transportation that is sometimes underground.
That's exactly the one that came to mind. They will put another franchise location right across the street. So just be wary of that. Understand in the disclosure in the territory section, is that defined? Then the other thing is to really understand the unit economics. And that does sound very basic, but some franchise systems, when you run the numbers, the cash flow relative to income replacement of mid-level, C-level, very high income earners may not be enough from one location. Sometimes they are. And so really drill down on unit economics as you go through the discovery process.
Gotcha. Perfect. No, and the again with things franchising, there is such a wide range, but for the most part, with the possible exception of the one we alluded to, you do get a kind of your turf and territory, so to speak. Whether it's a mile, 3 miles, 5 miles, 10 miles, whatever. Obviously, each brand is going to be very very different depending on how far people are going to go for that product or service. And so once they get that first one, but again, when they look at that unit economics that you're talking about, and they're going, man, I love this franchise, but I think I want more than one. Um,
Yep.
so now that franchise fee is getting them that first unit, and let's be honest here, Ben. Neither of us are particularly bright, so let's use very simple math on this. And let's say a franchise fee is $50,000 for that single territory,
Mhm.
right? In single unit.
Mhm.
What if somebody wants three? Does that mean they are paying 50,000 times three, $150,000? It talk about maybe what that looks like and some of the benefits from doing multi-unit just from the franchise fee perspective.
Yes, and here's where most franchisors will provide a discount on that initial franchise fee for multi-unit ownership. So for us, for example, our turbo tints, a 3-unit commitment takes it to an initial franchise fee of 99,000. A 5-unit commitment, the franchise fee is 165,000. So you really can save a lot of money as a franchisee, making that commitment up front. What that other also does is locks down the territory. So you will, I would suspect we'll get into this in a moment. So probably jumping ahead a little bit here. You don't have to build out all 3 or 5 locations at at the same time. I have a visitor in my office.
Awesome. Well, she can talk to us a little bit about that too. So that's fantastic. Future franchisee right there. She's all excited about scaling her brand.
That's right. That's right. So the cost savings benefit of multi-unit ownership combined with protected territory, so that when you get to, say, opening store number 2 or store number 3, that territory is going to be there for you. So you kind of get that win-win with a multi-unit commitment.
And you don't have to know exactly the physical street address of unit 2 and unit 3. You're understanding the different territories. If we were in, I'm in Arizona, so I'm going to use Arizona, right? If it's, hey, I've got one in Southeast Gilbert, I've got one in North Gilbert, I've got one in Chandler, I've got Scottsdale, I've got those general areas mapped out right out of the gate.
Yeah.
But again, the key thing, and I think a lot of people don't realize this, is they're like, oh geez, how am I gonna financially afford building out, say, 3 units of a franchise all at the same time?
Right.
That's not the case. There's a development timeline, and again, each franchise is a little bit different, but you're usually getting, maybe it's 12 months, 18 months, 24 months of having the first one open, the revenue kind of figuring everything out, and then you start getting number 2, number 3 up and running, correct?
Precisely. And if I can back up, you raised a very good point about mapping a territory. For brick and mortar, and so for physical locations, this is different than a home-based model. So we have to find where our franchisee will go in market. And when you do a mapping tool, a lot of franchise companies look at demographics and income levels. And for us, we're looking at car count. We're looking at by household what they're spending on automotive repairs. So we get very granular in the market. And we could take an area and say it's a 5-unit market, and they're all mapped out very cleanly. The reality is, when you do site selection, you're probably not going to find your location at the very center of your area. And so you may be close to crossing into another one of either it's your territory, another franchisee's location. So what we do, and a good franchise system will recognize this as a brick and mortar, you may want to say, okay, if we can support 5, let's actually make that a 4-unit market. So we allow for fluctuations in where you physically place your location. Again, we don't want to cannibalize an existing store. So you brought up a great point, but then to your other comment, everything happens one at a time. So for example, if a franchisee is financing with an SBA loan, each store, each loan is a separate loan. So you don't have to come to the table with all 3 or all 5 ready to go one package. That's a lot to do.
Yeah, and that's, I think, the piece sometimes kind of scares people. In theory, once you have that first one up, revenue from that is going to, at least in part, help get unit number 2 open. And certainly the more you get, a lot of that, when you get 3, 4, 5 units down the road, you can almost kind of self-fund that from the revenue from the existing locations. Right?
Yes, ideally, yes. Yeah, it's hard to do with store number 2, but you're right. Once you get 3, 4, 5, then everything is just rolling from your existing units. One thing to keep in mind with the SBA, and you don't have to go back to the same lender, but it can help to simplify future projects. They know you, they understand your file, they understand the scope of the project, even though you're doing them all in separate loans per unit. When you pay the initial franchise fee for a multi-unit commitment, a portion of that gets spread out onto the future growth of the build out project. So for example, if a franchise fee is $50,000 and a multi-unit commitment is $150,000, there's $100,000, and the franchisee pays that all in cash to secure that. There's $100,000 that gets spread out equally over the future loans. So the initial equity injection that's required for the SBA, usually it's 20%. We've seen 15%. There's already a big chunk of that committed to that future loan. So that combined with the revenue of the stores, it's a very feasible project when you break it down, and I'm happy to expand on this. Hopefully I didn't get too deep into the weeds on that comment. But I think it's important, Tim, that people understand initially it's a big project. There's a lot to get your arms around, but when you really break it down, it becomes quite feasible.
Yeah, again, when people realize it's not all in one chunk, right? Hey, I love this franchise. I really want to do 3 or 5 or whatever that might be. You're not coughing up all of the money. You're not doing the development all at the same time for that.
Correct.
So, so some of the advantages from having multiple units, obviously it's going to give you greater revenue potential. We talk about the reduced franchise fee for those additional units. A phrase that gets thrown around a lot, and I don't know that everybody fully understands what that looks like or what that means, is economies of scale. So now we have 2, we have 3, we have however many multiple units open. What the heck does that mean? Economies of scale. Why is that? What is that, and how does that benefit us as a multi-unit?
Yeah, that's the advantages of building out multi-unit. You could take advantage, for example, of your marketing costs. So you're in a territory. Everything is highly localized now. Digital strategies are geo-targeted. A lot of your traditional, so print media, for example, some of those things are still effective, while we've gotten away of the high level brand build at a national level, you can be very effective marketing in that area for multi units. Same with your people. So brick and mortar, you're going to have a center manager. You most likely will have employees at that location. Now you can do some crossover if necessary. You can do some sharing. If you find that one store gets very busy, you can move some people around. So there are some not just economies of scale, but effectiveness with how you manage going multi-unit.
Yep. That inventory piece, and ironically, a few years back, I remember being at the sandwich place we alluded to, and literally the location was they had ran out of one of the size of cups. And while I'm in line, here comes somebody with, the uniform from a neighboring store that was owned by the same owner, with a big sleeve of cups, right? And so if that's a single unit, now you're going, oh crap, we just ran out of something. How's that going to affect, the customer experience? How's that going to affect the money? Because it was the small ones, now we're giving away the bigger ones.
Yeah.
Those type of things, that economies of scale, like, hey, really the only thing they needed was one kid to run a sleeve of
Yeah.
cups over, right? And so you've got those type of things. Why would a franchisor like somebody who is a multi-unit owner versus single unit owner? Are there any advantages for the franchisor?
Yeah, for us, it can help with speed of building out a market. They do make that commitment up front, so we award it in the form of reduced franchise fees and protected territory. So that's the biggest one from a franchisor. The other part is, if you have a good relationship, a good franchising relationship, which most should be, a lot of people, equate it to a marriage. If it's a happy marriage, you want that person taking on more. It builds the brand in such a positive way. So those are just two of the win-wins for us.
Yeah. And I think too, it's, would you rather manage three separate owners with three separate locations, or one owner with three locations? And usually there's a little bit more of a growth mindset,
Yeah.
and from that standpoint. And then as that owner long term, and I think one thing people don't really consider much when they're getting into franchising is the exit strategy,
Yes.
right? Because you don't interview for a job and say, hey, I'm going to work here for 10 years and then this is my exit strategy, right? Because frankly, rarely do you as the employee get to pick your exit strategy. That's picked for you. But with a franchise owner, do we sell them off one at a time? Do we sell them off all together? Are we passing them on to somebody in a family member? But you have more options from that exit strategy down the road.
Correct. And great point. I really communicate this to candidates going through our process, is what could that look like for you? Because it can change which franchise system you go into. One of the benefits of retail is it's a brick and mortar. There's tangible assets. There's an equity build that can occur for a future cash event. And so in our case, in our franchise systems, we have a lot of legacy franchisees. It's generational. So that can be, to your point, are you thinking about son and daughter joining you in this franchise system? So you've got to find the right industry that has longevity for that. And it's hard to put a particular point on, hey, this is how you do it at multi-unit, but you typically find it's one of two options. It's either you piece it out or you sell it as a package. You sell it as a package, now your pool gets much smaller because people may not financially be able to afford that or be operationally equipped to step into that scale and that scope where you've built it up, you've got your arms around it, it's humming along. So just be mindful of that. Don't wait for that big thing to come along per se. you sell it off a unit at a time. Each one is its own separate franchise agreement.
Yeah, absolutely. So very cool. So which kind of leads us to this question, right? So what traits, characteristics, background, things like that would you look for that you would think, hey, this person could be a great candidate for a multi-unit owner?
Yeah, I look for proven leadership. Um, multi-unit ownership is a different animal than single unit ownership, and we can't stress that enough. Um, Single unit franchisees, and it's not a good or a bad. I'm not making a value judgment on this, but you have the ability to touch everything in that business. You can meet with your crew, you can meet with your staff, you can meet with customers. You know, in our case, you know every vehicle that's going through the shop, perhaps even daily. You don't do that with multi-unit ownership. You can't be everywhere at once. So the leadership, strong, proven leadership, can I manage people effectively? People, um, follow my vision. Can I set an expectation and know that they're going to rise up to that? The best franchise systems, they're going to be able to speak to it, but that's where a good franchisee has to do their piece of it to take the system, but then use their leadership skills and know that they're going to be able to execute on that. So what I look for, proven leadership, and you see it coming out in different ways. Some are, they've got the resume, they've got the corporate title, they've got P&L management and oversight across perhaps multi multi units in an organization. So that's one thing I may look for, but that's not it for me. That's not
Yeah.
limited to a good resume. It's more of a fit for us. How is it a cultural fit? So I don't mean to get so wordy in this answer. I think just to tighten it up, it's the strength of your leadership skills. Then everything below that will come.
Yeah.
Um, the systems that we teach, the processes, you have to understand what drives profitability, not just top line revenue, and of course that's a critical component, but per store, per unit, what are your key performance indicators? What are those KPIs that's going to bring profitability? Because that's what you have to manage. And when you get your arms around that, it makes not just a single unit operator so much smoother, but you have to know that across multi units because you're just going to run yourself in circles trying to put out little fires if you're not so laser focused on, okay, here's what I need to see from each unit to drive profitability that I'm setting the goal for. And this is where you work with your franchisor and the operations team. And then you just manage to that.
Yeah, if and I think you're spot on the leadership, right? 'Cause if you feel like you need to be involved in every last thing that's going on in the business, then there's nothing wrong with that. But you're probably more of a single
Yep.
unit operator because you can't be checking on the work that's being done on every single car in 3 different locations or oversee how sandwiches are made in 5 different locations. You've got to have that leadership, and I think even remote leadership, which is a weird byproduct or advantage, if you will, over the last year. We've all kind of figured out like how to manage all aspects of our life, personal and professional, remotely, significantly more than
Mhm.
before. So not that we want to say there's been anything positive from the last year, but that is one of them. I think we've just all learned, hey, that whole old school, I've got to be there to keep my finger on
Yeah.
the pulse of everything, No, you don't. But you do have to understand yourself, and that's part of the process with on our end with folks is really understanding what are you good at, what do you enjoy doing, what do you struggle with, and then finding the match
Yeah.
from that
Yeah.
standpoint.
If I can
So,
interject a
um,
quick anecdote,
no,
we have a franchisee. He loves to travel internationally, but he's wired up with security cameras around his repair shop that feeds to his phone. So he's in communication with the manager. For example, he may call the manager and say, "Hey, I saw that vehicle. It was sitting there yesterday. It's still in the same spot. What's the status?" So you're exactly right. In our modern times, we're able to do that more effectively. Good cloud-based point of sale software, where you're seeing these KPIs in
yep.
your dashboards across multi units. Um, but yeah, so that was
And part of the advantage of the franchise, right? That the franchisor is going to have a good chunk, if not almost all of it in place, the systems, the support, all of those things for you to be able to, now you just have to have the skill set and the desire to be able to manage that. And really the growth mindset of being
yeah
able to, again, I found the franchise that this is the one for me. I love it, but geez, I don't want just one. I want, I want three, I want five. I want to be it's the old, date myself here, the old Ferris Bueller line, right? Of the sausage king of Chicago, right? You can build it and grow it to whatever you want, and very different from the corporate world where you've got there's a ceiling on what you're going to be able to do, revenue income wise. That's not the case
yep.
with the franchise. So, cool. Ben, this has been awesome, man. Really appreciate you for joining us today to talk about how people can scale their franchise. So
Hey, it's
thanks
my
for joining
pleasure,
us.
and thanks for the opportunity. Sorry for the background noise. We talk about our new life with COVID, and and here we are getting through it. But love talking franchising.
We all do it. Yeah, no, I think we've all had a moment of those here in the last year, if not many. So, appreciate you joining us. For all of our loyal podcast listeners out there, we hope our Franchising 101 series continues to provide insight into the amazing possibilities that can be achieved as a franchise owner. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on your favorite podcast platform to ensure you never miss an episode. If you'd like to learn more about becoming a franchise owner, then let's schedule a brief introductory call. Click the link in your podcast window or find us online at francoach.net. There's never any fee for our service, so we encourage you to take that first step today to help create your better tomorrow. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day.